Alrighty, so looking at our examples today, we're going to be covering graphing from slope-intercept form. So if we look at number 1, it says y equals negative 1/3 x. Identify the slope of the y-intercept and graph. So we're going to start by identifying our pieces. So we first need to find our slope, and slope is always the number in front of the x. You're always going to be multiplying your slope with your x, or where you put your inputs. So my slope is going to be negative 1/3. Now, my y-intercept, it doesn't look like I have anything. Remember, that's what we're adding at the end, and it doesn't look like there's anything there. So that's why we add the plus 0. So since my y-intercept is going to be 0, it's the point 0, 0. Once I have those pieces, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to graph those. So I'm going to start at 0, 0. My slope was 1/3, so I'm going to go down 1 and to the right, 1, 2, 3, and plot a point. Down 1 and to the right, 3, plot a point. Down 1 and right, 3, and plot a point. The reason I'm going down is because my slope is negative, therefore it's been reflected over the x-axis, okay? And since my slope was negative 1/3, I go down 1 and to the right, 3. Remember, we always graph a line like we read a book. We start from the left and work our way right. So then I'm going to just finish out my points. That was not a very good line. There we go. All right. And so then draw my arrows, because remember, our lines go all the way to the end, and we should have arrows to show that the line goes on and on forever, to show that we have a domain and range of all real numbers. So now part B says, what are the transformations of the graph when compared to the parent function? So we know our equation was y is equal to negative 1/3 x. So we start from the left and work our way right. And the very first thing we notice, is this negative. Anytime our slope is negative, that means it's been reflected over the x-axis. Well, maybe if it'll let me write. Okay. The next thing that we notice is this 1/3. The 1/3, remember, is in between 0 and 1. Therefore, we have a fraction. Therefore, we can say that this has been vertically compressed. And we have to say by how much. So by a factor of 1/3. And the reason we have to say this is because it's going to be different if we had a 1/2, if we had 3/4, 2/3. Okay, those graphs are all going to look different, so we have to specify by how much. And if you look at this graph, it has been compressed because it isn't as steep. Anytime it's not as steep, we know it's been compressed. Now looking at number 2, it says Connor has $1,800, not 1,800, wow. Connor has $8,000 in his bank account. Every month he spends $500. Connor is not adding any more money to his account at this point in time. This can be represented by the function f of x. Guys, this should be negative 500. Think about it. If we're spending money, we don't get to keep it. We're losing it. So negative 500x plus 800, where f of x is Connor's amount of money after x amount of months. So this is one of those problems where it's just really our function notation problem. We have to graph it, so we're going to have to start by setting up our graph. Okay, I told you what the x and y axis labels are going to be. Here it says x amount of months. So when I go to the x-axis, we're going to do the number of months. Make sure you're leaving room so that we can add in our scale up here. Okay. And then the y, we said that f of x is Connor's amount of money. So I'm going to write total money. Now we do have to have a title. So we're going to say Connor's account, or we can say like per month. All right, so we've got our labels. Now we need to look at our function so we can come up with our scale. My function was f of x is equal to negative 500 x plus 800. Now, when we did sequences, it was really easy to go up by what our pattern was, okay, for our scale. So this one, we know that our pattern is negative 500. So we know our pattern is our slope, which is negative 500. So I'm going to go up by 500s for my pattern or my scale. So I'm going to start at 0. And I'm probably going to skip just because it's going to be easier to write. So 500, 1,000. Well, shoot, if I'm going to have enough room. Maybe let's scroll out and see. Nope, I'm probably not going to have enough room, so I probably can't do that. Sorry, guys. So 500, 1,000. No skipping. This is going to take a while. That's okay, though. Sometimes it's kind of relaxing, just filling out your scale. Kind of like Bob Ross and painting. It's kind of the same thing. At least that's how I feel right now. Oops. See, Bob Ross paints his happy trees. I'm doing my number scales. It's all the same. All right, so I got to 8,000. Now, for the months, I'm just going to go up by ones because it's 500 per 1 month. So I'm just going to go up by ones. All right, so my slope is negative 500. So I'm going to start at my y-intercept, which was 8,000. My slope was negative 500, so I'm going to go down 500 and over 1. Down 500 and over 1. And notice since we went up by 500 on our scale, it's really just where the points are. Isn't that nice? Isn't it nice how it works out like that? Oh, I didn't go far enough on my scale. So that should be 13 and 14. There should be a point right there. Awesome. Now, it's not just enough to draw on my points. We're talking about a function here. So we do need to connect it. Okay, because we're talking about all the points in between the points too. All right, so part B says we're going to state the y-intercepts and explain what they mean in context. So looking at this, my first y-intercept is 0, 800. So my y-intercept is 0, 8,000, not 800, 8,000. So we have to use both numbers in our sentence. So I can say at 0 months, Connor has $8,000, which is really nice. Don't we all wish we were Connor? So then at our x-intercept, we have 14. So our x-intercept is going to be 14, 0. Well, if I look at this, my x we said was number of months. My y was the amount of dollars. So at 14 months, he has $0, okay? If you just think about your labels, that's going to make it a lot easier. So at 14 months, Connor has $0. Sad day. Poor Connor. That's what happens whenever you don't save your money, guys. All right, so I know that's a long problem. You're not going to have to do too many of those, but that is one that you will absolutely have to know how to do. All right, so looking at the back. Number 3 says use the graph to answer the following questions. We're dealing with Mrs. Mariani's pencils up here. So Mrs. Mariani had 200 pencils, and as you can see, the amount of pencils she had is just decreasing. Sad day. I don't know what's happening. She's probably just losing all her stuff. It's not like she lets anybody borrow them or anything. So the graph shows a relationship between Mrs. Mariani's pencils and the number of months. Find the slope of the graph and explain what it means in context or in terms of the situation. So looking at this, our first point is at 0, 200. And then our second point is way down here at 5, 150. So if I look at my scale, I went down, so negative 50. Okay, so that's going to be my rise. And my run was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months. Okay, so my run was 5. You have to make sure that you are really looking at your scale for a problem like this. So my slope is going to be negative 50 over 5. But I can reduce that to, well, negative 50 divided by 5 is negative 10. Now, it's not enough just to say, oh, my slope is negative 10. I also need for you to explain what it means in terms of the situation. So we can really write this as negative 10 over 1. And then that's what we're going to explain. Remember, my rise is always on top, so that was the y label, so negative 10 pencils. And my run is always the x. Well, my x label was going to be months. So we're going to label that months. Now I can go through and actually write a sentence. So negative 10 pencils. Well, in this situation, if I have negative 10 pencils, I am losing 10 pencils. Okay? So Mrs. Mariani loses. Now, is she really losing them? Probably not, but that's okay. Loses 10 pencils every 1 month. All right, and then B says find the y-intercept of the graph and explain what it means in terms of the situation. So if I look at this, the y-intercept was at 200. So the y-intercept is at 0, 200. And now I need to go through and explain that in terms of my situation. So we said X was the months, and the Y was the number of pencils. Okay, so we can say at 0 months, Mrs. Mariani, that's me. Oops. Maybe if I can spell it. Has 200 pencils. All right. Okay, if you have any questions about that problem, okay, please let me know. If not, you can move on to your assignment.